Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you wherever you're watching from. I hope you are having a wonderful day and a wonderful week. I'm sure you can't wait, to have the weekend so you can just have a rest. So we are so happy today to have you on today. And me and Nelly, we're going to be talking about an important topic again today on our show, our children, their safety, where we've been raising awareness around safeguarding our children and how to you make sure that our kids are happy and safe and to make them to become confident and resilient children. So this week we're talking about a topic that is often not discussed about, and it's about mental health. We're talking about how confident are we as parents, being able to discuss mental health issues with our children. But before we start, my name is Peggy Barre. I am the survivor empowerment coach and the founder of Arise and Thrive Academy. I'm going to pass it to Nelly to introduce herself before we continue.
Hello, everyone. I am Nelly Kwasumi, a transformational life coach and one of the directors for Hand in Hand Community CIC. Welcome to today's session. Yes, we have been talking a lot about mental health, emotional well-being, and just last week we celebrated World Mental Health Day. And it is very important because we know that we experience emotions on a daily basis. We go through mental health every day because it's the state of our minds. But then we don't talk too much about it. So Peggy and myself thought of it that if we as parents don't talk about mental health, what then do we expect our children to manage with their mental health? Are our children able to talk about their mental health to us? But then if we don't open up about that, where will our children know that they can talk about it? So this is a very, very pertinent topic to us because it's something that we live on a daily basis. And following statistics about children, especially teenagers, that are really struggling. You have harming themselves, some even ending their lives. It is very, very important that we need to start talking about mental health as grandparents, great grandparents, parents, so then our children, because they learn through observation, they can see and know that it's okay to talk about their mental health or their emotional well-being because they experience that on a daily basis. And when they do that, they will be able to seek help. Or when they start struggling, they will know that they can talk to someone and that way they'll get the early help instead of waiting until they get into crisis. So that's why we thought that it's really, really important for us to talk about it. How are we confident, we as parents, confident talking about mental health with our children?
That is so true. And before we continue, this session is a recorded session because we don't want to skip any of our sessions. So we're going to be recording it and then we're going to play it tomorrow. But notwithstanding, if you are watching after the record, the recording version, and you have any question or comment, you can always pop it in the comment section. Nelly and I will always have a look. And then if there's anything to respond, we will respond. And like we always say, it's always good if you come to be part of us so we can all sit, on this panel and then we chat. So, yes, just like Nelly said, mental health is something very important. And as she was just talking, I was thinking, as parents, we don't even want to talk about our own mental health. And then what about us talking about, about it with our children. It's very difficult. And we have many reasons why we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about stress. We don't want to talk about anxiety. We don't want to talk about any other challenges like, that we're facing mentally. So today in this session, we are going to be looking at why mental health conversation matters in parenting. We're going to be looking at how to create a safe space for emotional honesty. We're going to be looking at some tips for age appropriate communication as well as building confidence as parents to talk about tough topics like mental health. So we don't know how the discussion is going to take us, but whichever direction it takes us, we're just going to flow because we speak from the heart. We don't prepare things and come here. We just speak it because we're parents as well, and we've experienced this thing. We've got children, teenagers, young adults that have gone through these things, and we're just going to be sharing our own experiences, hoping that at least it's going to help you. So yes, Nelly, I think we can dive into the first bit, like what, first of all, stops us, or why is mental health conversation difficult among parents? Because I know, I'm speaking from experience, it was difficult for me, Nelly, to talk about it, and I had my own reason, which I'm going to share. But why is the conversation difficult for us as parents?
Okay, that is a very brilliant starting point. I think from my own experience, talking about mental health was really difficult for me initially because growing up, we didn't know anything about mental health, because what we knew about mental health was that the people who were mad, the people insane, we didn't
Yeah.
know about mental health. And growing up, though my parents spoke to me about how are you, which meant how are you feeling and things like that, but we didn't go into it. It just ended there. And I knew that you were either happy or you are sad. That's all I knew. But then when I got into the UK and I started hearing about mental health, I was really curious, and particularly from the first case ever that I was assigned to work with. Because of that curiosity, I started learning what is mental health all about. And it took me years and years working in mental health settings. And as I was working, I was learning, because I realized that there were just so many things that were happening that I didn't know about it. So as I was learning, I was also studying and then seeing it in real life, because I was working in mental health settings. So then I started expanding my vocabulary. I was using the dictionary to expand. How can you describe when you are feeling this way, that way? And then finding out more about mental health as well. Since I was doing psychology, I was doing a lot of reading and research and things like that. So then when I started understanding what mental health is, I first of all had to differentiate that mental health is something that everyone experiences, everyone. And I started differentiating mental health from mental health problems, where that's what a lot of people think when they hear mental health. Already they think of mental health problems. But mental health is a state of mind. Like I am speaking, like you are watching me and also will be speaking soon. I don't know what's going on in your head, in your mind. You don't know what's going on in mine. Those watching, we don't know what's going on in your mind. That is your state of mind, and it is your mental health. But it doesn't mean that that's a mental health problem. So mental health and mental health problem are on a continuum, they're on a line. So mental health is here, and then you go onto that line to where it is problematic and it is mental health problem. So you will fall on that line somewhere. So when like I said, it took me years to learn about mental health and emotional well-being. And because I was struggling emotionally, I was just learning. And it took me a while, because I started bit by bit to talk about it. And mind you, those I've just explained why I was not able to talk about it, because of lack of knowledge. Due to the lack of knowledge, I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't know about it. And which I might be thinking that's a cultural thing, because talking about mental health is like strange. But then looking back, even when I was in primary school, I recall some people who were mad But at the time, I didn't know it was mental health, but we just knew the people were mad. And they used to say they were cursed because of something they did or something someone in the family did. So we didn't understand. But yeah, it took me quite a while to start talking about it. And when I was talking about it, I was like testing the waters. I was very gentle. How will I? Because I had to live it myself, because talking about something when I don't know is very tricky.
Mhm.
So I was
Mhm.
just going bit by bit. When I felt that I knew a bit more, I'll talk about it. Then obviously I started with my children and then started going out. I think for now I'll stop there so you can take over.
Yeah. No, I think what you said there was really pertinent because again, it's the mindset and where how we were brought up. Um, again, we were never told that there's a great difference there between mental health and mental illness. It has to be distinguished because sometimes when we talk about mental health, people are like, oh no, I haven't got mental health. No, I'm not talking about mental illness. I'm talking about your mental health. So it's very important to first of all differentiate that. And sometimes we don't even understand. I did not even understand that even there are categories of mental illness where you can say it starts from category like from point A to even point Z. There are different aspects of things that we go through. And there was, I think I read somewhere they say everybody has got an aspect of some sort of mental illness in us. Either it is diagnosed or it is not undiagnosed. But whether we like it or not, and sometimes it all depends on the severity and how whether it affects our daily life or our normal functioning. So these are some of the things that if we think that we all have it, then our mindset towards it is going to change. For example, when I started, the time that I started knowing more about mental health is when I started I was doing a community support and I was working with a mental health organization. And we used to support those who most of the clients were living in supported accommodation, and most of them they had all types of mental illness. Some of them were severe, some of them they could carry on their activities, some of them right down to schizophrenia. That's in fact my first time I ever heard the word schizo, which I couldn't even pronounce. And then that is when I started finding out like, okay, so that means the people back home where they carry stuff and then they walk naked and then they carry, that's when I was told that okay, maybe it's because their own has gone to that level. Because when you're schizophrenic, you hear voices, you do this, you do that. And then it starts to occur to me that okay, that means, those people are the ones that maybe they have gone down, their own has deteriorated to an extent where the good thing is that in this country, if it can be managed through medication. But why back at home, once you get to that point, you just go to on the street and start walking naked, nobody cares because they just feel that, oh, that one is mad, let him just be walking the street without recognizing that it's something that they can be given that care even though in having that state. So for me, that is when I started recognizing and I started picking little things like, even OCD. I feel like my own sort of I OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder is a disorder. It's class as a sort of kind, with it all depends on whether we allow it to control us or we can control it or that we can function normally with it. So yes, in a way, everybody has got their own little aspect. What about even scared of spider? There's some people who they call it, there's a name for it, where some people are scared of things that anything that flies or anything that crawls. So these are things that when we start recognizing that things like that are some sort of mental health or mental illness, but they are not debilitating, then we start feeling confident to break down that stigma of mental health. That mental health is not like somebody walking on the street half naked. Mental health is here and now. Mental health is within our home, is in school, in everywhere we go. So I think once we break it down that way, then we start feeling confident to talk about it. But then When we talk about mental health, of course, we usually talk about stress and anxiety, and then we talk about depression. The common ones, stress and anxiety, which of course are things that as parents, we don't first of all want to recognize that we are stressed. We don't first of all want to recognize that we are anxious or we're going through some state of anxiety. We don't even want to admit that we've even gone down to a state of depression. Then what more of us putting together or gathering that confidence to talk about it, to our children. So I think the next thing that we might be looking at
I think
is how.
just before you go to the next point, if you finish with
Yeah,
that first point,
yeah.
I think you were talking there about the mild to moderate mental health, which is the common ones.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have the other side, like you've talked of schizophrenia, there's a psychosis where people hear voices, hallucination, some visual hallucination and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We know there's a difference because some of the mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, those are learned and are from fear, they're fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
But then some of them, like schizophrenia, they are inherited.
Yeah.
They run in a family like DNA and things like that. So while some, like those that are organic, like the schizophrenia, they can be managed. All of them can be managed with medication, but like the schizophrenia, they can only be managed. I don't, yeah, they can be managed. It doesn't mean that it can be, yeah, let me know to say that. So it can be managed, all of it. But then the other one that's learned behavior based on fear, like the OCD, the depression, and things like that. Those ones are behaviors that the person who is having any of those phobias can unlearn what they had learned.
Yeah.
So those are two different things. And like
Mm-hmm.
going back to the experiences that you've talked about when you were back home is the same as myself. Because of the lack of proper care, those people, they were just doing their own things. And by the time members knew it, they were walking out on the streets. But
Mm-hmm.
regardless, if that is a family member, it is good to have age-appropriate conversation with the children to know that that person is behaving like that because they are struggling with something in their head or going on with them. Because that's something that, if I reflect back, I didn't know that instead we were made to feel scared of people that we considered were mad, whereas
Mm-hmm.
they are just people like you and me. And sometimes some of them just needed someone just to talk to them, to give them that reassurance. But because we learned to be scared of them, it instead
Mm-hmm.
made them, sometimes when we see them and we run, they will chase us. And then to them, I mean, different interpretations. But I think it's really good, regardless of the kind of mental health illness that a person has, to be able to talk about it, because I have worked with a number of people who have had certain diagnoses, or even, yeah, some people have mental health illnesses, but they don't want their partner, their wife, husband, or their children
Mm-hmm.
to be told. So imagine you are in a household and you say these are the people you care for and who care for you, but you are struggling mentally and you don't want them to know. Imagine how that dynamic in the home will be like. So it's really important that regardless of whatever mental health issues someone is going through, it's good to have that age appropriate conversation within the family so they know, because it will help the child. Because instead of the child to see one member of the family who is struggling mentally and are scared that, oh, that person will hurt me, that the person
Mm-hmm.
who is struggling will feel very isolated, because there's a lot of misconceptions that people with mental health problems are at risk to the public, whereas most of the time they are more likely to hurt themselves than to hurt other people.
Absolutely. And I think, Nelly, if we want to bring it, if we want to talk about like what we currently face in terms of the milder sort of common type of mental health symptoms, like if we're talking about anxiety, we talk about stress. These are things that our kids, or not just our kids, us as parents, we struggle with them, and then our children as well, they struggle with them. And I think it will be important to maybe first of all talk about how do we even recognize that we are struggling mentally. How do we even recognize? Because sometimes we're on that that wheel, hamster wheel, where we're just going and going every day. It's just like on autopilot. You're just doing and doing and doing and doing. But then your health, your mental health is actually going, being affected. But then because we are so busy to recognize, when do we actually recognize that we need to, first of all, pause and even talk about what we are feeling inside here? So I think I don't know whether you can shed a little bit
And
of light on that.
yeah, I think like stress is good
Mm-hmm.
because stress acts as a motivator for us to do things.
Yeah.
But then if you are under stress continuously, that's where it becomes problematic because when you are under stress, your mind, there are some chemicals in your body that are being released. And
Mm-hmm.
when that is constant, okay, for instance, if you are on the watch out that something might go wrong, which is the case with anxiety, you focus that something will go wrong all the time. You are just being vigilant. Even if things are really calm and surreal in your
Mm-hmm.
mind, you will be thinking that the worst will happen
Mm.
because, like, anxiety is irrational thinking. So your body keeps producing those chemicals.
Mm.
And it is not good because it is just all the time, all the time, all the time. And because your mind is so creative, it will really magnify whatever you are scared of. And in your mind's eyes, you will see that it's real. And to an extent, it affects your daily lives. So let's go
Mm.
back to like the OCD that you talked about. There are some people who cannot leave their house because of OCD.
Mm.
Some of them will want to go out of their house and they will come back so many times because they need to check this, they need to check that, they need to check. All of that is anxiety based. All the phobias are anxiety based.
Mm.
So the point where you need to start seeing it as problematic is when it affects your daily life. You said it before. When you start noticing that you are getting easily agitated, you are
Mm.
getting anxious. Say something small that in the past you will just deal with it. But then
Mm.
that same thing, you feel like, oh, not again. And you just lash out. You are getting angry.
Yeah.
You are not sleeping properly.
Yeah.
Or some people will oversleep.
Mm-hmm.
You are not eating well or you are overeating. You
Yeah.
start probably drinking alcohol too much just to suppress the emotion and things like that. Just things that you are doing more than you used to do. And I think they give like a period of 6 weeks that
Yeah.
if you have been doing those things for up to 6 weeks, then that is when they'll class it as a clinical diagnosis, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's just like, if it's situational, we need to mention that it can be situational as well. For instance, if, say, someone is bereaved, you can experience all those symptoms of stress because
Mm-hmm.
it is natural. That's a grieving period, which is similar to the anxiety. But then,
Mm-hmm.
if you give yourself that time for the natural processes to go through, because you will go through the acceptance phase, because
Yeah.
it starts with the denial, and then you go through the acceptance and things like that. So when you know that you are struggling, like I've just mentioned, it's
Mm-hmm.
good to seek for help. It's better you ask for help, and the medical practitioners or the mental health professionals, they see that it is not as severe as you are thinking, than for you to sit quiet that, oh no, I've always managed, or this person has been managing, I can manage as well, or I am strong, I've been brought up to be very strong and I can manage everything, or I'll just sort it out by myself. No,
Yeah.
always seek that help. It's good to see someone who is more specialist in that aspect of mental health, so that they can help you, rather than you just sitting and trying to manage what you don't even understand by yourself. Because when you are
Absolutely.
doing all this, our children are there, they see a lot. And imagine, because they don't talk about it, it doesn't mean that they don't know. They see a lot, they know a lot. It will really
Mm-hmm.
affect them as well, because they don't
Mm-hmm.
actually understand what is going on, because no one has talked to them about it. And then assumptions
Absolutely.
come in, and then they might talk to their friends and things like that.
Yeah. So that is so true, Nelly. So what I'm gonna do, maybe just run down some of the symptoms, because we're gonna talk. You've already mentioned some of the emotional, cognitive symptoms, and even behavioral and physical. I think it will be very important for us to identify those ones, so that as parents, if we are feeling that in ourselves, or maybe we think that our kids or our children are going through some of these, having a one-off symptom does not mean that you've got a mental. It's something like prolonged. I say you say 6 weeks or so.
6 weeks,
If
yeah.
something that's been happening here for 6 weeks, then that's when you can say, okay, maybe it's time for me to talk about this with my child, or talk, and then maybe guide my child to seek help. So we talk about emotional symptoms. If you're feeling sad all the time, you're down, you're hopeless, excessive fear, worries, or anxiety. We talk about extreme mood swings. 1 minute you're high, the next minute you're low. We talk about unusual anger, which Nelly also mentioned, and hostility, or that irritability. And then we talk about the cognitive symptoms, where Nelly has mentioned it's about confused thinking, or maybe having difficulties concentrating all the time. Detachment from reality. Nelly also said about, paranoia or hallucination, where you're hearing voice, you're seeing things, that other people don't see or hear. That those are some of the cognitive symptoms. We've talked about delusions, like having strange beliefs or thoughts about certain things. And then we talk about illogical or disorganized thinking as well as difficult remembering things. If it happens all the time, then of course that is some of the symptoms. We'll talk about behavioral symptoms, where it's withdrawal from friends. If you're somebody that you used to go to places, have fun, you hang around, and then out of a sudden, or even your child, you notice that they used to go out, and then sudden they just withdraw from friends, family, and social activity. Or maybe they have significant changes in sleeping patterns and appetite, just like Nelly mentioned. Decline in ability to perform daily tasks, or difficulties coping with stress. And we've talked about neglect of personal hygiene or self-care, where you don't just care about your personal self-care. And then we talk about increased sensitivity to sight, sound, and other body stimuli, like if you're like highly sensitive to it as well, that may be some symptoms. And then, of course, problem with drug or alcohol use, because again, some people now will resort to drug and alcohol to escape those symptoms. And then last but not the least, we talk about the physical symptoms, which is persistent physical problem like stomach pain, back pain, constant headache. That could be some symptoms as well, and just general tiredness and low energy. So some of these symptoms, like I said, Nelly, sometimes we do go through some of these, but because we're on the hamster wheel, we just shove it, you know, we don't even pay attention to it. And it is very important that we know about these symptoms, so that we can identify it for ourselves. And then we can also, if we observe it in our children, then we can actually know how to talk to our children and support them on how to seek help. So before we have that conversation, Nelly, I think how we need some conducive atmosphere to have that conversation with our children. Because I think in our previous session, we've talked so many times about how to make the home a convenient and conducive environment to have conversation like that. For example, I will say to myself that it was difficult for me to actually have a conversation with my children about mental health because one, I was scared. I was scared because I didn't want to make it obvious to them that they may be going through, some of these mental challenges. And secondly, I didn't want to make things worse for them. And again, it kind of, sometimes as parents, you just want to look at the positive side. You just want to look at the positive side without actually accepting that, what, hang on, maybe this child is actually going through. So especially when things happen in life, for example, when my marriage broke down, it was a massive challenge. That period was massive. I don't even know how I went through it with my own mental health, let alone what was going on in the mind of those children. And we think about the fact that they've just come out from where their family home, the changes, things are happening so quick for them, which they did not call for it. That's one thing. They were not even prepared for it, and things were just happening. And then, of course, they were going through transition, even in their own puberty stage, and then transition in schools. They had to make new friends. They had to be in a new environment. All of those things. So we can only imagine what is going on in their mind, and how confident are we to really sit down and talk to them, especially if we ourselves as parents are broken.
Yeah, yeah. And thanks for sharing that. I think the starting point is for parents to start talking to themselves about their mental health because a parent cannot just start a conversation with a child when they themselves are still in denial of their own mental health. So, in that respect, I feel the starting point for parents is to educate themselves around mental and emotional health, educate themselves. Now on social media, on YouTube, there's lots and lots of information there. Expose yourself there to learn, educate yourself. Because when you know like those vocabularies or you know the signs to look out for, then you will know that, oh yeah, this is what my child is experiencing this. But like for me, what I did and which I'm still doing at some point now is if any of my children come to me and say, Mom, I'm feeling depressed, just for example, that if they say they're feeling depressed, I'll ask, what does depressed mean? Because
Mm.
there has been times where a child would just say something, and then when I'm exploring what that means, it's just completely different, or they've just exaggerated it because when they have one symptom, they go on the internet and they just search things.
Yeah.
So when they come, I really try to get their own understanding of what they think they are going through. Sometimes I see things because as a mother,
Mm-hmm.
you know your children and you
Yeah.
identify certain things that the children might not necessarily tell you. But that
Mm-hmm.
mother instinct, you see and you know that there's something not right. But then sometimes probably it's not a matter of denial. It's
Mm.
just, when you see it once, you don't just want to jump to conclusion. You want to give yourself time to observe again because if you see it one time and you just jump to conclusion, you might be putting ideas into that child's head when you don't even know
Yeah.
what they're going through. So
Mm-hmm.
for me is I observe and then like putting one and two together. If what I've seen is continuing and then some other behaviors are coming. For instance, if the child is getting so upset with things that probably in the past they just used to ignore it, or from nothing, they just get really angry and probably they're asleep, and just what we've mentioned, I will speak to them. And when I want to speak to a child, I have a one-to-one. I don't speak to the child with all the other children, because
Mm.
regardless of the fact that they are our children, they like privacy as well. Though,
Yeah.
if I speak to them and they want to speak to their siblings, that's up to them. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a different thing in its entirety. But it's good to monitor. And then besides doing that, when I started feeling comfortable to talk about mental health, I make sure that I talk to the children about mental health. And I think where I started off with is, oh, how are you feeling today? And it got to a point where they got really, really angry that, oh, mom, why are you always asking how we are feeling? I said, I just need to know. And then so it started off that way. And then I just made it like a plaything, and then all of us we are talking about how we feel. Though sometimes if someone gets angry, they just want to have that cool down period. But every child is different. Some of the children, immediately something is not going well, I know my phone will ring, because I have been open to them. I said, if you are struggling, I am here. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like, I mean, everyone adapts what is suitable for them, for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, besides having face-to-face conversations, we have a WhatsApp group with my children. So if I'm reading something or I see something that I feel is important, I share it on the group. Whether
Mm-hmm.
they watch it, they read it or not. I know I've done my part as a mother to share relevant information. So
Yeah.
it's for everyone to adapt the way things
Absolutely.
work for them. Yeah, sometimes I will intentionally put like a TV channel where all of us are there. So then we watch it and things like that. And like there was a time where we all were struggling. We all were struggling. And at that time,
Mm-hmm.
I was getting into meditation, and I introduced meditation to my children, and they like it. So I introduced it at the very beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they'll listen to it, but sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, mom, I'm not sleeping at night when that meditation is on," and things like that. I'm like, "Okay, if it's disturbing you, then don't put it on," and things like that. But then after some time, I'll hear them put on the meditation when they're going to sleep. So I know that I've done my part at the very beginning. So it's it's just to like give the children the tools and leave
Mm-hmm.
it to them. So
Mm-hmm.
when they feel the need, then they know they have the tools in their toolbox. They'll take it out. If as parents you want to say you must listen to meditation every night, no, that's not how it works, because the children will just
No.
be fed up. You don't impose it on the children. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And I do feel that sometimes for us to be able to, it's good as parents sometimes to be vulnerable. And when I say vulnerable, it's we should be comfortable to share how we feel with our children. It is okay to tell your kids that, you know what, today I had a bad day. I really had a bad day today. And be able to tell them how what you went through and how that affected you or affected your emotions. But at the end of the day, it's all about showing that at the end of the day, I still had to, put myself together, and hey ho, life continues. So it's always good to, because when we are vulnerable to that extent, then or we must not share everything. There are some that we need to manage information, and manage what we tell them. But the essence is that let us made it known to them that it's okay. It's okay that your day can go wayward. It's okay that people will step on your toe. It's okay that you're not even feeling it. So in that way, they can actually share with you openly without being scared, or without them thinking that you're going to judge them or just quash them or shush them. So I think that's another way of creating that environment, comfortable environment, just like you've said. And you said something there very, very pertinent. It's important to give them the tools. It's up to them whether they use the tools or not. When you were talking like that, it reminded me, I think I've shared this story, on our shows, where I talk about those one time where my elder son was really struggling mentally. He was going through a lot, in his life. And at that point, I was so lucky that I also embraced my growth. At that moment, that stage, I was also growing, getting to know myself, getting to know where I stand in terms of my own mental health. How can I, unlearn some certain limiting beliefs and relearn empowering beliefs? So I was really reading a lot about self-development. And so I had to download, quotes and all of that, and I put them on the board, vision board, and I placed it just beside his bed. When he gets up, the first thing he sees. When there's some days that he will wake up and he will look at it and say, "Ah, mom, those things are not working." I said, "That's fine, keep reading it. Even though it doesn't work, keep reading it." But looking at him today, in fact, he is the one that read books more than me. And only I don't even I whether that helped him or not, but I know it did something. It did something with his mind, because sometimes when you read something over and over and over, even at the beginning when you start reading it, it sounds like weird. But when you read it over and over, it starts to become truth and reality, and it begins to transform your mind. So it's always good to give them the tools, and giving them the tools means that give them contacts, like if they especially if they are certain ages, which they can contact the GP, or maybe contact places where, because there's sometimes that our kids, there's certain things that they will never want to. My son, I told my 14-year-old, he wrong child line one day. And after he rang them, he came back and said, "Mom, I rang them." I said, "What did they tell you?" And then he just said, "Oh, well, they just told me the same thing that you said." So, but it's good for them to have those tools, so that let them do it themselves. And then, okay, if there's something, then which along the way you can help them, because especially in this part of the world, our children sometimes they are more smarter than, they think that they're more smarter than us. So again, it's let them theory, let them proceed, do what they want, what they think it will be good for them. At the end of the day, we all want their mental well-being. We all care for them. What we want for them is the best. So yeah, so like you said, Nelly, creating that environment, that positive environment, is very, very important, so that your children can feel comfortable to talk to us, as well as we can feel comfortable to talk to our children.
Yeah,
And yeah, you want to say
yeah,
something?
yeah. I just want to I just want to share my experience, which I think people who are watching
Mm-hmm.
might. Okay, so when my marriage broke down, my
Mm-hmm.
children were really, really struggling. And one of my daughters, she felt that she was the cause of our marriage breakdown. And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't understand. And at the time, same like you, I was doing a lot of reading. And at that time, I was focusing on conscious parenting. There's Dr. Shefali
Mm-hmm.
who talks about conscious parenting. I was reading a lot about her, reading a lot of research. And I decided that I would be spending time with my children. So I
Mm-hmm.
told them, I said, every single day, I will spend 30 minutes with each and every one of you. I
Mm-hmm.
gave them slots. I said, every day, if it's if the first person is 6 o'clock, I said 6 o'clock, I'll be with you
Mm-hmm.
for 30 minutes. So I did
Mm-hmm.
that for all my children. It was not easy because that 30 minutes, sometimes I would go because what I used to do is I used to respect their rooms. When I go, I would stand at the door and ask, where do you want me to sit? They'll show me where to sit. I will sit there, no phone, because that time was a one-on-one time. I will have no phone. And then for like one of my daughters in particular, the one I said was really struggling, it took her a long time. I would go there, she would just point. You know, that's anger. She would just point that, sit there. You know, the tone of voice as well.
Yeah.
I would sit there. We went for long and no one would say anything. But when is the time for me to have one-to-one with her, I make sure I go there, sit. And then it went on for so many days. And then one day, as I went, opened the door, I said, where do you want me to sit? She didn't even answer. She just came, gave me a hug. And you know, that hug where it is intense and it felt like I could hear the blood in her veins. That's how tight it was. And she didn't let me go. And then I didn't let her go because it was strange, but it was good.
Yeah.
And we were there for, I think, like 5-10 minutes. I don't know. But we were there. We were just crying and crying and crying. We didn't speak. And then when, you know, after some time, that tension will be reducing.
Yes.
And then I sat again, we didn't speak. But then I later realized that that was the beginning of breaking things.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, I had to install cameras in my house. Because, you know, when I left the house, I was always scared because I didn't know what can go on. So I was constantly on my phone because I put the cameras and I was checking my phone whenever I go out because teenager at the time, anything, and the friends as well. So that was a strategy that worked for me. I allocated time and I was there. They knew that when it's at 30 minutes, I would be there in their bedroom, and I respected their bedroom because that was their space. And over time, that worked. And till now, they are able to open up and talk to me, which is something I'm really grateful for. I give them their chance. I don't force them to talk about it because sometimes they just want to process it before they tell me, which is fine. But they know that if they are struggling, if they're struggling, they can always come to me. Even if they know that I don't have the answer, but they know that I will always listen to them. Yeah, so if we make our children to know that they can speak to us, but like I said at the very beginning, we need to start with ourselves because if we don't acknowledge our own emotions, our own mental health, how then do we expect our children to open up to us? So we need to start with ourselves to give that room for our children also open up.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Nelly. That was so powerful. And that is a tip, that's a tip. That's just learning that, it's good to allocate that time. Well, if you can, that is a wonderful strategy that you can actually institute that opportunity to communicate with your children and build that bridge, narrow that gap, between us and our children. Because to be honest, sometimes we're very busy. We come back home, they've come back. By the time we come back, they're asleep. The next morning they've gone to school. So again, if we do it consciously that we can spend some quality time with them, in that way, that's where they can share, how they are feeling. You talked there about, another way that we want, another important aspect that we want to make sure we mention is about age appropriate conversation, because among our children we've got different ages. The same way I would talk to my 14-year-old is not the same way I'll talk to my 18 or my 19 or even my 22-year-old, because they all have, same as somebody, you may have a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, and age gap. How do we I'm sure, Nelly, when you allocated that 30-minute slot with all of those children, they were different ages, and I'm sure you had some age appropriate conversation based on their ages, and with that privacy where they could see that space as, this is my private space, this is what I can have, with this child. Then I think that was also a great way to be able to meet them at their point of their specific needs. So I don't know whether you want to add a little bit on that.
Yeah. So when it comes to age appropriate, I'll talk about my strategies because those strategies have worked for me. So when I want to talk to a child, I start with how are you? How do you feel? How was your day? Just a starter. Sometimes they just say fine. I was like, okay, what did you do in school? What did you like? What did you not like? And things like that. I always like a child to open up when it comes to their mental health or emotional or emotions. I like them to open up. I'll give an example. There was a time my son was in primary school. I'm sure I've shared this some time ago. He was in primary school. So I went to pick him up. And as I went to pick him up, he just shouted, Mom, I don't want to be a girl. And I was just so confused. And I was like, no, because he was not talking because he was just crying, crying, crying. So I held his hand. I just offered some reassurance. And then as we got to the car, he just said, because I had asked him what was going on and he didn't say it, I just left him. I held his hand and went into the car. As he entered the car, he just screamed, Mom, I don't want to be a girl. And I was so confused. Already, just from the tone of voice and what he said, I knew that it was too much for him. So then I was like, but you are not a girl. Who has said you are a girl? So then he opened up to talk about there was an incident on the playground and someone hurt him. And when he started crying because he was in pain, they started laughing at him to say that, ha ha, you are a girl. Any small thing you cry and things like that. So, but then he carried it too much. And then because he knew that I offered that reassurance and I was ready to listen, I didn't push him to tell me, oh, what is going on? What is going on? I gave him the space. And then when he felt that he could speak, he opened up and he explained it to me, which I really appreciated. And then now that was when I came in to say, okay, I said, because I always take it as a joke. I said, listen, I give you fufukon in this house. So what does fufukon do? Gives you strength. So I like to turn things into, I like humility, humor.
Yeah.
I turn it into humor. So that's what I do with my children. I like them to come up with things. I might see sometimes if I see it and I don't want to jump to conclusion, I might give some questions that might tickle them to say what is. But I don't go, you are this, or no, I don't go that way because I might be wrong. It might be that the child is tired, but then if I bring something else, then I'll be putting more ideas into the head. So it's to make create that environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And another way to actually help kids start the conversation is about giving them, depending on, we're talking again about that age appropriate conversation where we can allow them to score their self. There's a journal. I think that journal, when I wrote that journal, it was because I used it when I was with the kid. That was the first time ever I told my kids to score me as a parent. Like, score me, which tell me how would you score me, and don't be scared that I'm going to judge you, I'm going to shout at you. Just be sincere and tell me which score were you going to give me and why, and how can I improve as a parent. To be honest with you, it was scaring. I was scared. I was scared of what they were going to say, but they said it anyway. And thankfully, most of it was positive. It was positive. They gave me recommendation on how I could improve. And I feel that time, there's some times where, especially as single parents, you wear two hats. You are the mom, you are the dad. And sometimes your masculinity can take over your femininity, where you cease to function as a mom. The mom is the tender one. The mom is the one that hugs, that talks nicely, that is calm, and gentle. But sometimes when you want to play the both role and you take that masculinity side, like you have to be firm, you have to, sometimes if we're not careful, that masculinity can take over our femininity, which is okay. And it's a skill to try and balance it, where you say, well, you know what, I'm going to slip now into my mommy shoes. And no matter what they're doing, I'm just going to be mommy. But then there are some times where you take off the mommy hat and throw it and say, you know what, you put on the other one, and then you are like, so I felt like there was a time where I functioned on my masculinity for too long, in such a way that my children began to miss the mommy side of me. In fact, I started to, like, when they see me coming, they're adjusting, like, oh, I need to, So that was the only point where they said to me, and I remember my son and my daughter, the eldest one, they said, Mom, please, can you just calm down? Can you just, we would love you to calm down, to relax. We know that you're doing enough already for us, but we just want you to calm down. I said, okay. So at least that was a recommendation, which, but I took it on board. So these are some of the things that sometimes, like you said, Nelly, we shouldn't be shy to accept our vulnerability, because mind you, we are human as well. We are human. And when we show our vulnerability, and then we are telling our children that it is okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to speak up. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. So it's very important. So one thing I used to do with them is that I used to ask them to score themselves, for example, in their emotions, like how they're feeling. How will you score yourself today from 1 to 10? 5 being in the middle, 2 or 3 or 1 being really bad, and then 9 or being good. So that's another way of helping our children to spark that conversation. So if they score themselves, whatever they've scored themselves, you ask them, why did they give them that score? So in that way, you'll be surprised that sometimes our children can coach them own self. Our children know the solution to even what they are going through, but they just need that reassurance, and they just need, again, that second voice, to confirm that this is what they need to do to be able to be this thing, or to achieve this thing that they want to achieve. So that's another way of sparking that conversation. And then
Yeah.
maybe we could always, what I used to do is that you score them over, like in the journal, the teenager journal that I publish as on Amazon. Every month you could do it once. I know I used to do it with my son. I don't do it anymore. But every month you could score them, and then you see how they are improving. how they're improving on that area, and asking them what can I do to help you improve on this area. And you give them that support, and then the next month you ask them to score. You can see they can be going higher, meaning that they're improving in that area, which again is good for us as well as parents. And it's always good to even tell the children to score us maybe month by month. It's a way to spark conversation, conducive conversation among our children. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to add. And yeah,
Yeah,
before as
yes.
we
I mean,
round up.
those are really good tips. I just wanted to add that, like, in my role as a social worker,
Mm,
I use some conversational starters. So
mm-hmm,
there's something like a dice that has different emojis. I like that one because it gets children to talk about their emotions. So,
mm-hmm,
the dice, just take it. I'll go and I say, okay, I have this dice. I'll give the child to always start. Throw it. I say, whatever emoji comes at the top, you tell me something about yourself on that emoji.
mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to my turn, I do it. So we take turns.
Yeah.
And children love it because it's a game. They love it. They
Mm-hmm,
want to talk and talk. And even if I mean, I have the dice, but again, I
mm-hmm,
have like pictures on the emojis. Just
mm-hmm.
use it. And like now with our phones, we have emojis. We can still use it. That okay, if it's a smiley face, tell me something about yourself. Tell me
Yeah.
what happened today or yesterday. If it's an angry face, tell me what happened. And then, that's to start the conversation. And then you can follow up depending on what the child says. So, yeah.
Mm, mm. It's so good. And another last but not the least tip is that sometimes, like you heard Nelly said, just a hug. A hug can go a massive way. My son, the last son, I think he has this tendency that when he comes home, he will just hug me, and I will ask him, how was your day? It was all right. And then sometimes he'll just hug you and then just stay on your shoulder and then release. So again, these are some of the things that it's okay. It's okay for us to make them feel that, what, they've got a shoulder that they can lean on. They can hug you. We shouldn't be that, oh no, how, especially for African parents. Hey, how do you, no, we need to make sure that at least we are available. We are available when they need us. And
Yeah.
we're not saying that don't set the rules, don't be disciplined when it comes to disciplining, or there have to be boundaries. Boundaries needs to be set, so that, because if the boundaries are not set and implemented, then again we will go the wrong way, or our children will go the wrong way, which again is going to increase their own mental health, and is going to also increase our own mental health. Because the worst thing for a parent is to have children who are disorientated and children who have gone astray. You are not trying to just bring them back on track. You are struggling yourself, plus the fact that you have to work, you have to put food on the table and all of that. It is not the direction that you want to go. So again, that discipline is very, very important as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then just to add, like you talked about your son, we need to monitor and understand our children's body languages
Mm,
because we cannot impose that a child to show that they are happy have to behave in a particular way. No,
mm,
every child has their own way of expressing themselves because some children do not like to be touched. Some people, even some children, don't like body to body contact. But then
mm,
now and again, they might want it. If that's how that child is, take them for who they are.
mm,
Sometimes, so yeah, so it's just to know what an individual child tolerates, what they like, what
yeah.
they don't like, and deal with
Mhm.
it that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, so I think we've covered nearly all areas on how do we confidently or how can we build that confidence. And again, last but not the least, we've talked about, in fact, there's one point which talks about building confidence as a parent to talk about tough topics. We need to build that confidence, just like Nelly and I said, we all went through a journey where we had to first of all learn it ourselves before we can teach our children. It has to start from us. So it's very important, first of all, to kind of know what mental health is. We've talked about it, what mental health is. We've talked about the fact that it's okay for us to be having mental health, one mental health illness or the other. It's about identifying the symptoms early enough and then try and seek the support that you think you need to make sure that it doesn't aggravate and get to a point where it will be debilitating, where you cannot actually function on your normal, carry off your normal daily activities. And we've talked about the fact that it's important to build a great environment, a conducive environment that you and your children can feel free to talk about things. Your child can talk about you. We need to be approachable as parents, be able to give listening ear to them, be keen. Nelly has shared some great strategies, if not how to be keen on those children's need and be there for them to say, you know what, I am present to listen to you, to talk to you. Even if you don't want to talk to me, I am here. I will sit here, so it is also important to build that conducive environment. And of course, we've talked about age appropriate conversation with our children. We need to pay attention. What you say to A must not be what you say to B. Their needs varies. So we need to make sure we pay attention to their needs and make sure we provide those needs as parents. We've talked about giving them the tools that they need. If they want to use it, fine. If they don't want to use it, it's up to them. But at least we know that we've given them that tools that they can use or who they can contact in terms of if they don't want to talk to us. And it's okay sometimes if your child doesn't want to talk to you, but make sure that you've given them an alternative to talk to so that it can be a right person. Because if you don't give them the right person, they're going to go talk to the wrong crowd, or they're going to go talk to that friend who cannot even offer them something, positive. So, and sometimes in that desperate stage, they will be drawn to that negative side. So it's very important to give them the right number who to talk to. And of course, we've talked about beginning with ourselves as well. We need to continuously improve ourselves, continuous learning. Learning does not stop. I've seen Nelly and I will talk several on this topic. You've seen parents can spend hours and hours watching. I'm not saying that all those YouTube, TikTok things are not good. It's good because sometimes when you come back, you just want to wind down and you just want something that you're just going to take your mind off. But how many hours are you spending on those things, and how are you learning? So it's about time that we learn. We read things, I mean educative things that can help us, improve on a daily basis. Thank God for technology today. Anything that you want to learn is out there. It just depends on this. Everybody has got a cell phone. How well are you using that cell phone? Are you using it for to waste your time, or are you using it valuable, or using it diligently, if that was the right word to use. So again, it's very important that we make sure that these things are being done. In that way we can build our confidence to actually talk to our children. So Nelly, I don't know whether you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it really well, Peggy. Education is our go-to.
Mhm.
Education, let's start with ourselves, because when we start with ourselves, we will, without even telling our children will see. That's when we come in as role models for our children, because if we cannot be role models for our children, unfortunately, some other person will.
Mm.
The children need like a goalpost that they can always turn to. And if parents, we have the opportunity and we don't want to make use of that opportunity for one reason or the other, then someone will help us. But we need to give ourselves permission. Don't focus on what has happened in the past.
Mhm.
You can look back just to learn What lessons were there? But don't stay there and then move forward because your children are your responsibility and you want them to move forward. You want them to grow in life as well. When you grow, you help your children to grow as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, Nelly is a transformational life coach, which is a first point of contact. If you think that you need somebody to talk to or somebody who can help maybe either you or your child, to have that conversation, then of course she is a go-to person to contact. So yeah, so we I think that brings us nicely. We've gone above maybe by 12 minutes, but it's okay. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. I hope you learned something. And of course, we're going to meet again in 2 weeks' time. And if you have any topic that you want us to talk about, please do drop them in the comment section. And of course, if you want to become part of our discussion, tell us. We will bring you on board so that we can all sit on this panel and we talk about it. What Nelly and I are doing is just an initiative that we just kind of making sure it is actually creating a difference. I've seen parents are even though sometimes they listen, they will come and listen later and they say, oh, I really like what you said today. And whether if it is just one soul, one person, I always say whenever we come out to say something or do something, focus on that one person, that message might just be an impact to them. It's not about thinking about many people, not just one. If we've changed just one life, at least we've done something. That one life, again, one parent is changed their children, and other things can follow. So thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. And you take care and stay blessed and continue to have a great conversation with your children. And Nelly, I don't know what you want to say, but say one last word.
Yeah, thank you so much. And since this is a recorded version, Becky and myself will read and comment. So thank you so much. And we know our children are everything to us. Let's be there. Let's be the role models to show our children how to live life. Things have happened, but we need to move forward. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.